Yes, we're really excited to do this one because, as you know, we're fanatics just like you. We love basketball. So we thought it would be fun to take a look at some of the rebuilding teams that are, obviously rebuilding right now. And we would put them in tiers on how we thought their rebuild was going. Now, JD was the mastermind behind this, as he is most of everything on the show. Honestly, JD produces this show for us, if we're just being real. So JD put this together. I'm just really excited to be along for the trip on this one.
Yeah, and just to kind of explain a little bit, I think there are a ton of rebuilding teams. And to kind of go and talk about who's the best out of all of them doesn't make too much sense, because I kind of believe some are at a certain point where they're not totally wanting to be in contention. They're still in a developmental stage. Maybe somebody like the Washington Wizards, who just got rid of Bradley Beal, Kristaps Porzingis, was able to pick up Poole, things like that. They're probably not trying to be a contender right now, but they're probably wanting, a little bit of time to develop their roster, develop their players. Somebody even like Portland Trailblazers, they are kind of on a rebuild. Once they get rid of Dame, they're going to kind of be on a complete rebuild. Someone like the San Antonio Spurs too. I just don't think that these guys are necessarily, they are rebuilding, but they're not the ones we necessarily want to talk about right now. We want to talk about the teams who have been in a rebuild for a little bit of time, and they're looking to make that push. Now, those teams, we made a rebuilding tier list right here of 6 teams that we wanted to talk about who have kind of made their core right now. And, they are making tweaks. We didn't include someone like the Oklahoma City Thunder because we kind of feel like they really hit their core. They are a young and up-and-coming team, but I really think that they are where they're supposed to be right now. They're progressing. They're not really rebuilding as much. They're kind of in their third or fourth year of the rebuild. Somebody even like the Memphis Grizzlies, they're a younger team, but we wanted to focus on these 6, the Detroit Pistons, Indiana Pacers, Utah Jazz, Orlando Magic, Houston Rockets, and the Nets, and how we think they're really going to be performing this season and maybe the next season in terms of how they're going to be developing and doing their playoff pushes. Who might be the best? And do you want to start us off with the Detroit Pistons, Doc?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of looking over their roster, I mean, I like the fact that they still have Bojan Bogdanovic. They kind of shut down oh man, what's his name? I'm forgetting. I'm drawing a blank right now. Cade Cunningham, that's it. They kind of shut him down towards the end of the season.
Well, he was injured all season.
Was he last year?
Yeah.
Maybe you should start us off with Detroit. I didn't watch too much Detroit ball last year.
No, it's okay. I mean, they were one of the worst, I think the worst team in the NBA last season, and they kind of got screwed over a little bit by the system with the draft process, getting the 5th pick. But I do really like Asar Thompson. I really think that Detroit has a lot of promise. I think Cade Cunningham could be a stud, although we still have a lot to see from him. I mean, given the fact that he was injured all year, he still has a lot of promise, but we'll just have to see how he really pans out. I think that he could be great, but he also could be just like a very good player. And so I do think Detroit has some promise. They have some really good bigs. Jalen Duren has showed a lot of promise. I really like the signing of Isaiah Stewart, but I do kind of feel like they have a little bit of a log jam with the bigs. But I really love Asar Thompson. I think this team is not ready for the playoff push yet. I still think they're going to struggle a little bit, even with Cade coming back and Jaden Ivey coming into, the next year of his NBA career. I will probably put Detroit at the lowest. You'll have to tell me what you think, Doc. But I'm going to kind of leave them in the C tier. They're not quite there to make a playoff push. They're not quite there to be in contention of maybe a ring or be in the playoffs, but they're probably 1 to 2 years off. What do you think?
Yeah, I like the combination of Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey, too, comes from basketball lineage. His father played, his mother played. I think his mother coaches as well. And so he's kind of like this second generation basketball player. So he has a good understanding of what it's going to take. He has a good sense of maturity. I like that paired up with Cade. I like James Wiseman a lot too. I still think there's untapped potential there. I think when you have Bojan Bogdanovic in your locker room, everyone loves that guy. Everyone loves that guy. He plays hard. He never complains. And when the front office of Detroit got him, they said, "Oh my gosh, this guy's incredible." Like, he's a good culture setter. I would agree with where they should sit at C. I don't think that they're going to be that great next year either. But I think that if they get a couple more young pieces, just like Asar Thompson, they could be cooking with gas, man. I think that, honestly, I would even love to see Asar at the 2, if that's even probable, or the 1, because he's one of those players who has the versatility to where he can play 1 through 3, but he'll be good at the 3 for them. You could have Bojan at the 4. Wiseman is going to lock down the 5. That's not a bad team. They're going to have to develop, but they're not going to be the worst team next year. I don't think so.
Yeah, not at all. They've got some time. I think they are going to try and compete this year, but they might struggle a little bit. Right. But moving on, Doc, there's a team that shows a lot of promise in the Indiana Pacers. I really like the Indiana Pacers. They have been making some really nice moves. I mean, they got Jarris Walker. They still have Halliburton, who, is probably at least a top 3 or 4 point guard in the NBA. I think that this guy is an absolute stud. I know that you and me, Doc, have talked about him a little bit. He has just shown that he doesn't turn over the ball a lot. He was on the All-Star team last year. I think this guy has a ginormous ceiling. He could easily be one of the best point guards, maybe top 2 in the next couple of years. And so, with him being the cornerstone of the Indiana Pacers, as well as guys like Benedict Mathurin, Nembhard, who I think is awesome. They're still a little young, but they're showing a lot of promise. I think maybe not this year, but the next year, they could easily be a top 5 in the East. I think that they could pretty easily make the playoffs this next year. I think they got Bruce Brown from the Nuggets, who had a really great performance. And so I really like them. I think Jarris Walker shows a lot of promise too. I think he's going to be good. I'm not so sure about the offense, but he's going to be a great defender. Maybe he could turn into somebody like for the Golden State Warriors, they've got, I'm blanking on his name, Draymond Green. Where do you think they should land in this tier list, Doc?
I'd give him a B, man. I would. I really like the pickup of Obi Toppin too. For a second round draft pick. You and I, we're huge Obi Toppin fans. We think that guy has a lot of untapped potential. He just wasn't really getting the time he needed to develop properly in New York, which is a total shame, because when Julius Randle got hurt, he took over the starting 4 position. That first game that he played in the playoffs as a starter, he averaged 18 and 10. I love Obi Toppin. We love Obi Toppin. I think that's great. Benedict Mathurin is so much fun. Tyrese Halliburton, in my opinion, if we are talking about a traditional point guard, okay, listeners, don't go crazy when I say this. It's a hot take. But Tyrese Halliburton right now is the best point guard in the NBA.
And you have him in the B tier?
I mean, we could move him to A. I love Tyrese.
I'm thinking we move him to A. I think they're the best off out of any of these teams.
Oh, not better than the Jazz.
Not really?
Better. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to get into that.
But Tyrese Halliburton, if we're talking about assist to turnover ratio and production, okay, I think that Tyrese fits the mold for what the old traditional point guard used to look like. And I think that he is the best traditional point guard in the NBA, bar none. I think he's better than James Harden. I think he's better than Trae Young. Okay. And you have other point guards too. Like, I'm not saying this guy is better than Steph Curry. Okay. Listen to me, guys. Listen. When I say traditional point guard, my criteria is going to be ball facilitation, court vision, turnover ratio to assist ratio, and then obviously general production, right? So Tyrese Halliburton, that's right. JD, I love you, my man. But Tyrese Halliburton is all those things, okay? He is the best traditional point guard in the NBA, period. Now, obviously, point guards have shifted a bunch. They've changed a bunch. You have guys like Dame Lillard and Steph Curry, and Ja Morant, who are putting up amazing numbers and still having a fantastic assist ratio. But Tyrese Halliburton has court vision that's just second to none, in my opinion. I loved it. And this kid's just going to get better. Benedict Mathurin is just going to get better. Okay. Buddy Hield, great veteran, right? Miles Turner, he's still there. We got Obi Toppin now for a second rounder. And Bruce Brown from the Nuggets. They're poised to make some noise next year. Definitely.
Yeah, I think leaving him in the A tier could be good. I personally think that they've got the most potential just with Halliburton at the helm. But moving on to the Utah Jazz, you want to start off with them?
Yes. So personally, and I'm trying not to be biased, guys, but maybe I'm a little bit. I am from Utah. I do love my Utah Jazz. I think that they're sitting in an S tier. The whole reason why is because the Utah Jazz are literally entering the second year of their rebuild. And they are ahead of the curve by a lot. I would say they're even potentially neck and neck with the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are exiting their rebuild. I think that they are. Lauri Markkanen proved to be an incredible talent, okay? No one was expecting him to come out and be that efficient and score that like that and be able to spread the floor. Like, he's a jumbo size wing, man. Like, he's not just an all-star. Lauri Markkanen has the potential to be a superstar. He really does. He really does. Plus, they have some great young up-and-comers. Keontae George is going to be electric one day. I think Bryce Sensabaugh is always going to provide steady scoring that is going to be needed for a team. Like, he seems like the kind of guy who knows how to pick his shots, which he did wildly efficiently in college. And college can be a rat race. We know that. So I think Bryce Sensabaugh is a great pickup. Taylor Hendricks has a great combination of size, three-point shooting, and defensive IQ that a lot of power forwards don't have. You have Walker Kessler, who in my opinion one day is going to be a DPOY. He just is. Okay. He is going to be better than Rudy Gobert. He already can score more efficiently than Rudy Gobert. And Rudy, I love you, man. But Walker Kessler has a higher ceiling than I think you ever had. And I'm trying not to hate, but that's just the truth. That kid is going to be something special. I think that John Collins is an insane pickup for Rudy Gay in a second-round draft pick. Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson. Look, that team absolutely can make the playoffs. To be able to make the playoffs in your second year of a rebuild, I mean, when's that ever been done? I don't know if it has. Like, let's really think about that. When was the last time a team entered a rebuild after dismantling their entire roster and almost made the playoffs and will definitely make the playoffs in year 2? When has that happened?
You think they're making the playoffs this season, this 2023-24 season?
Yeah, I do. They're going to be in the play-in, but I think they're going to be in the playoffs. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that they're a play-in team right now. I think that Keontae George showed a lot of promise in the summer league. He had a 33-10 game, 29-7 game, or 26-7 rather, showing that he was one of the best players in the summer league. And then he went down with an injury after like 6 minutes of play. So he is going to be the Jazz point guard of the future, in my opinion. However, you know, with the multitude of draft picks that the Utah Jazz have accumulated, I still think that they, you know, Lauri Markkanen is an incredible player, a guy who's going to probably average 25, 26, be on the precipice of an All-NBA for the next like 3 to 5 seasons, probably will be All-NBA 1 to 2 times, or maybe more. You know, we still haven't necessarily seen his ceiling. But I don't necessarily think they're making the playoffs this next season. I think that they are a play-in team. It'll be good for them. You know, you kind of hit that threshold where it's like, should we tank to get another good player, or should we just try and gain experience with the crew that we have? Because let's be honest, you can't just be a contender right off the bat. You have to have experience. You have to have years in the playoffs. And so I think they're going to be trying to win, especially since they don't have their draft pick for next season. But I don't know if they're necessarily better than the Indiana Pacers. But Lauri Markkanen makes a really good case. In terms of, it wasn't too long ago that Halliburton was traded to the Pacers and became their core piece. They kind of blew it up too. They maintained they maintained Buddy Hield and Miles Turner.
Yeah.
But, the Jazz kind of did something similar, except they kind of blew up their entire roster with maintaining Clarkson.
Yeah, and that's why I want to put them in the S tiers, because the Jazz literally tore it down to the studs. The Pacers gave this crazy 1-for-1 swap essentially for Sabonis. And by the way, that's like one of the greatest win-win trades ever. Tyrese Halliburton is insanely talented, and Domantas Sabonis fits in perfectly with the Kings. At first, when that trade went down at first, I was scratching my head and I was like, the Kings got robbed. What are they doing? But they have brought out the best in Domantas. Like, oh my gosh, what a win-win for both these teams.
So, Doc, for the Pacers and the Jazz, let's say you put them in a best-of-7 series right now. Who's winning?
The Pacers.
That's what I'm thinking.
The Pacers in 7, yeah.
I think they're going to have a better season this year. Who knows about next year? But I think that they, just with Halliburton, I just think they're slightly better than us. I might move them.
In terms of roster, I agree with you. But in terms of rebuilding, the Jazz are the Kings right now, man. They're the Kings, and that's what this tier's about. How good is the rebuild? The Jazz they fast-tracked, man. Mm-hmm. They're S tier for sure.
Well, what about the Orlando Magic? What do you think of them?
I like them. I like what they've done. I think Paulo Banchero is a beast. I like Franz Wagner a lot. How can you not like him? I like Markelle Fultz. I like the addition of Anthony Black. He's going to be like a third string for them for sure. Jalen Suggs, I think, can now start to really develop. They got Joe Ingles too. Joe Ingles is a great shooter. Jet Howard is a pretty good shooter from what he's shown in the summer league too. We'll see how well that translates over 82 games. But I wouldn't mind giving them a B.
I think I'm putting them in the B tier too. I think that towards the end of this past season, they really became electric. They were trying to win. They even got close to a playoff or a play-in position. They had really struggled at the start, but they kind of found their footing. I think Paolo Banchero is going to be a 25, 26 point per game person in the next few years. I don't think that's that crazy to say. I don't necessarily like the Jet Howard.
Man, that's fact.
I don't necessarily like the Jet Howard or Anthony Black picks. I know we've talked about this a little bit. You were very high on Anthony Black, taking him at number 6. It just seems like a replacement for Fultz, and I like Fultz. I think that he brings a lot to the table. He still has a lot of untapped potential. He had his best season of his career this past season with the Magic. It's like, I don't think you need to pass on this guy, and maybe they'll move him to the 2. Maybe he'll be better at that, but he's not the best outside shooter. Orlando Magic struggled pretty bad at the 3-point percentage this past season.
Absolutely, but there's no way Anthony Black is replacing Markelle Fultz right now. That's not happening. Anthony Black is behind Cole Anthony. It's going to go Fultz, then it's going to go Anthony, at least in my opinion. And then you have, when you're swamping guys or you have garbage minutes, you throw Black in there to develop.
Then why take this guy at number 6? Don't you want to be like at least an immediate guy contributing, developing if you're taking him in the top 5, top 6?
Well, he absolutely can contribute. He can do a lot of great things. He has great court vision. And that's one of those situations where you have to take the best player available. And in terms of shooting, you're right. Orlando is not a good shooting team. But when you add Joe Ingles, who's been a steady and honestly magnificent, word of the day, 3-point shooter just throughout his entire career. Jet Howard knows how to pick his shots. That's some good shooting right there. They need to improve more, though.
Ingles is getting old. I just don't
Oh,
think
yeah.
that he's really going to be the stable person he was last year, the year before when he was close to being sixth man of the year. It's just you need to find better depth in the shooting department, and I just don't think they have it. I think they are close to making a playoff spot again. I just don't think they're quite there. Kind of like the Detroit Pistons, although I think they're going to be better than the Pistons.
I mean, Joe Ingles ages like a fine wine, dude. Like, he doesn't really have any athleticism to lose, and that's not a slide on you, Joe, I promise. But I mean, look, he got injured and played for the Bucks and just came back, and he was able to produce off the bench. He'll come off the bench for the Magic. He'll slow the game down. We know how he works. You know, he has that really slow runner layup where he fakes the pass and puts it in on the left side. He's a good catch and shoot three-pointer, or a good 3-point catch and shoot guy. I don't expect him to play like 25 minutes or anything crazy like that. He'll probably play like 15, but he'll get you buckets for sure.
Yeah, true. Well, what do you think of the Rockets? They just made some big moves.
I'm really disappointed. I'm really disappointed because I would not have spent all of my cap space on Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks. You're telling me, Houston, you're going to look me in the eye and tell me that you couldn't get Dylan Brooks for cheaper than 4 years, $80 million guaranteed? Are you kidding me, guys? There's no way. You could have got this guy for pennies, man. Like, unless, you know, Dylan Brooks' agent he's clearly the greatest negotiator in all of basketball history, because this contract, not only is it insane, it's fully guaranteed. It's fully guaranteed. This guy's going to get $20 million a year over the next 4 years. Oh, okay. Well, I hope that he at least gives you guys real production, because I know in a few episodes ago we were talking about how you could get this guy for bone dollar cheap. Okay, all a dollar bin Dylan Brooks. Okay, when you have a front office saying we're not bringing this guy back at any cost, you're telling me you couldn't negotiate something cheaper than $20 million? That's just insane to me. And Fred VanVleet, while I really like this dude, I do, he is not worth the insane amount of money that you are paying for him. I'm just kind of blown away. I'm left scratching my head. What I do like, you got to give him a D, man. At least that's my
D.
Yeah, I mean, look, in terms of, well, maybe just in terms of their free agency, the free agency season for them was Bush League, but in terms of their rebuild, you got a Steele and Cam Whitmore, you got Jalen Green, and we just talked about it. Jabari Smith Jr. is going to be fantastic for you. I always forget Alperen Şengün. That's the guy's name. That guy was a complete steal too. You have
Jokic Jr.
core. He really is. He's great. And I like the new head coach, Ime Udoka. He knows how to hold guys accountable in terms of being a defensive juggernaut and making sure that you are always playing the best defense possible. I like all that. I do. I don't like the free agency move. So I guess, but even though this is a rebuilding tier, so maybe give him a C, and maybe even a B, depending on how Jabari Smith Jr. turns out, and Amen Thompson. You know, like Fred VanVleet isn't going to be there forever. He's there for 2 years. Amen is probably going to come off the bench. He's going to get you some great production. He's going to get his legs under him. You get to pair him with Jalen Green. Jabari Smith Jr. looks like a beast. Alperen Şengün. Woo. That's not bad.
I mean, they struggled this past season, but I mean, you're right. They definitely spent all their money on two interesting players. But I do think that those guys are still contributors. And although this is like, you know, maybe the third, fourth year of their rebuild, something along those lines, I think Jalen Green is still developing. And I think having him alongside Fred VanVleet will be good. I think that at worst, they are kind of reaching, you know, maybe bottom of the barrel, but I definitely think that they could be a play-in team. or a playoff team. Maybe not this year, but the next year. Maybe a play-in team this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think they could be in the plan, which would be a remarkable jump, by the way, from being like one of the bottom teams of the NBA to all of a sudden scratching the surface at playoff contention. But I mean, that's why they brought in Ime Udoka.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's why they said we're good with our young talent. We'll develop what we have. We want to move forward and get some veterans. They got some veterans, so we'll see how Ime throws all that together.
I honestly feel like that whole thing where the Rockets were saying, hey guys, we're willing to trade our young core for veterans. We just want to start winning right now, kind of put a little too much pressure on the organization. And then they ended up spending all of this money on Van Fleet, which is insane. He makes so much money now, as well as Dylan Brooks, who
over 40 million.
Right. Brooks should have made like pennies on the dollar. No, but people were saying he should go to Shanghai, and now he's making $20 million a year. So that guy's going to be starting. You're going to have Van Fleet, who's going to be starting, and then you're going to be like, well, what about Thompson? What about Cam Whitmore? Cam Whitmore was the Summer League MVP, and you're telling me that this guy is going to be coming off the bench with Thompson?
Yep.
So I don't know. It seems a little wonky. However, they do have
Easton, probably.
Yeah, and Tari Easton's great. He looked better than Jabari, in my opinion, this past season. But now Jabari's looking like he might be coming into his own.
Those are facts. He looked way better than Jabari last season. This season, I'm telling you, Jabari's coming out the gate, man. He's coming out the gate.
Should we wrap up with the Nets real quick?
Absolutely.
The Brooklyn Nets, for me, I mean, we saw them blow up the roster just about a season ago by trading Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. And we're starting to see that a little more often. Teams, being willing to blow up their rosters to get some draft stock. Unfortunately for Washington, they had Bradley Beal and Porzingis. They didn't get too much back, but I would say the Nets got a ton back. They got draft capital. They got Mikal Bridges. And although, we are Utah Jazz fans, I would like to strike a similarity there where I don't think people expected Mikal Bridges to be as good as he was. He ended up, when he got shipped to Brooklyn, averaging around 26 points per game, very reminiscent of Markkanen, who ended up becoming the most improved player of the year. And so that guy shows a lot of promise. They have Cam Johnson, who they just re-signed from his restricted free agency. He's making a lot of money, but he did really good in the playoffs last season. They have a lot of draft capital now. They just got, I think, Tariq Whitehead and Noah Clowney. I don't know how I feel too much about Clowney, but I think Whitehead has a lot of potential. And Clowney is, your prototypical maybe 3-and-D guy, a center who can also shoot from the outside, maybe play the 4, the 5, stretch 5 guy. So they might be a few years off, but they do have Claxton too, who is very good defender. And I think that they have a lot of promise within like the next year, the year after. I would put them, maybe in a play-in position as well. Actually, I think all of these teams are pretty close to being play-in, maybe aside from the Pistons. Where are you putting them, or what do you think of them?
To me, the Nets get that S tier, man. The reason I say that is because you're right. You're absolutely right. No one thought Mikal Bridges was going to come out the gate and be a beast like that. That was insane. His production jumped so much. And if that happened at the beginning of the year, there would have been a legitimate argument for him being the most improved player of the year. And I still think there actually was, because of the way his production just skyrocketed. It was amazing. I love Nick Claxton. That kid has a good head on his shoulders. He's a great defensive player. Spencer Dinwiddie is just a great locker room presence. He puts his head down. He works hard. He grinds. I think keeping Cam Johnson was brilliant. I think that when you traded Kyrie Irving and you got Dorian Finney-Smith back, that guy is a defensive menace. In fact, Luka was upset about losing Dorian Finney-Smith. There have been reports that have said that that's his favorite guy to play with, or was his favorite guy to play with. So I know he wasn't very happy about that. But we're also forgetting, too, about rolling the dice on a guy who has just not had a lot of luck and success lately, in Ben Simmons. Now, Ben's obviously going to be coming off the bench. We're not starting this guy. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But there is potential there. There is potential there. I mean, it wasn't too long ago that he won Rookie of the Year. You know, he has some good NBA accolades. Ben Simmons still has a body that is built for the NBA. He just needs to get his mind right. And I think that Brooklyn, well, I don't know. We'll see if Brooklyn can make that happen for him. But they got a bunch of trade capital. They have tons of assets. They have movable contracts. They found themselves a total diamond in the rough in Mikal Bridges. I mean, this sounds like the Utah Jazz rebuild to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd put them in the same vein, but they definitely have an accelerated rebuild, much like the Jazz. They just got a ton of draft stock, and they got Mikal Bridges, like you're saying. You know, I think that they are in a good spot, and they're probably in a similar spot as the Jazz. You know what? I'll agree with you on that one. In terms of the most promise out of all these guys, maybe, you know, who's going to make the most of a push, I'd probably put the Jazz and Nets and the Pacers as well, although I wouldn't put the Magic far behind. And yeah.
I don't think Detroit is going to be leaps and bounds better than they were. I think that, I mean, I don't even know if they'll make the playoffs next year. They are, but they have a lot of young, good pieces that just kind of need to develop. And they have the good structure of having a couple veterans there as well to kind of make sure the locker room keeps that good vibe. We'll see how the Rockets turn out. They completely uprooted their entire culture. So, yeah, I think the Jazz, Nets, Pacers they've been killing it, man. They really have been.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably put Pacers, Nets, and Jazz if I was looking at that.
Thank you for watching another episode of the Full Court Press NBA podcast. For the full podcast, click the link below and subscribe for more hoops content.